Welcome back to Flashback Review. I'm J77, continuing with part 2 of animation films based on TV shows, and I'm going to go back to the 80s, the mid 80s, where a animation show was very popular. Immediately, people started begging their kids, children started begging their parents, that is, for their toys. And my God, if you was in the school back then in the 80s, you know what I'm talking about. Transformers, a movie that really didn't get enough respect as it deserves because of one reason. And I'll get to that as the review is. But needless to say, the animation TV show was very popular, very different. It wasn't the first Transformers style show. That was the whole funny thing about it. We had a Transformers related show. It just wasn't popular. And that was GoBots. They had to even had their own movie, which I will deal with at another date and time. But Transformer was different. You had more charismatic characters that really does fit the difference between good and evil. You have the Decepticons and Autobots, Optimus Prime and Megatron, Starscream. These characters were very popular and still remains popular to this day. People will still go back to the old show more so than they go back to some of the newer shows, as well as the movies that the show was based on. So this has been a very popular show. So when there was an announcement that a movie was being made and we saw the commercials, we were hyped, we was pumped up, and we was hoping that our parents would take us to. I, of course, was not one of those lucky people, but there was a lot of kids in school that was, and they had no problem of expressing their love for this movie. This is a movie that had a lot of kids, boys especially, talking about this movie, and they did a lot of spoilers, which made me mad. For when the TV series came in, I pretty much knew what was to be expected. But I finally did see the film about a year later. I finally saw it on video. Very hard to find on video. In fact, when I originally owned the video cassette copy, I had to get the Canadian version because the American version had discontinued, but the Canadian version was still out there. And I'm kind of glad I got the Canadian version. I'll get to that a little later in the review. But needless to say, when I finally saw the movie, I fell in love with it. I was like, wow, my parents didn't take me to see this. I was mad, but I finally saw it on video. I saw it years later. Still holds a lot more staying power to me. Has a lot more staying power than all the Michael Bay Transformers had done combined. The film pretty much has its flaws, as I will explain in this review, but needless to say, this film takes place years after the events of the Transformers, of Autobots and Decepticons was on Earth. In fact, the film pretty much starts in space, goes back to Earth, but the rest of the adventure goes in space. So Earth pretty much isn't really much a major factor, but it is a key factor because of the events that happened on Earth. This film did not waste time letting you know this is going to be a dark ride. And the movie, and a time where a lot of these films that are not made by either Don Bluth or Disney, a lot of people seem to shine down upon. And this is one of the main reasons, not what was going on in the movie, that this film did not do good at the box office. And I'll explain to it. I also explain to you why as I go on this review. But needless to say, the Decepticons have won the war. Go right straight down to it. They're letting you know in the year 2005, the Decepticons completely conquered Cybertron. The Autobots pretty much now are outcast. Living pretty much, in exile away from Cybertron. Yet Optimus Prime is still thinking he can win this war, and he sends Einhide and the rest of the old Autobots back on Earth to get some supplies because they don't have enough energy and enough resources to make a full cell assault. So they're now getting ready to do that. But Megatron, being a good leader himself, had sent Laserbeak to spy on Optimus, and that led to Megatron doing an assault of his own. And his assault had was anything but nice. It was devastating. If you were a kid watching this film, you were shocked of how many deaths have happened within the scale of 20 minutes. This film was not playing games. It let us know as the audience, this is not going to be this baby, 5-year old. We're gonna talk down to you. No, we're gonna let you know this is war, and unlike the TV show, there are going to be dire consequences and deaths. Out of all the films I'm going to be reviewing in this, I'm letting you know right now, this is the one that dared to be dark. This is the one that dared not to talk back to the audience. This was a film that took the TV show out of the element of this film. This is a movie. It's letting you know this is a film. We're gonna treat this like a film. Unlike the TV show where we had limitations and we can't show too much violence or too much violence that actually has an emotional impact. You're gonna be emotionally impacted by this film, and nothing was more to the truth to that than the death of Optimus Prime. People were outright crushed, upset, angry, you name it. They were just devastated. They did not expect to see Optimus Prime, the great leader of the Autobots, die in that scene, and it was not pretty. It was gruesome. Even when he was in taking his last breath, if I like to call it that, seeing his whole entire paint job turn gray, it was like, wow, they they really didn't play games when they said this gonna be an emotional roller coaster ride, and it was for that good first half. For that good first half, you were not reminded of the TV show. You were actually watching a full length feature, and this is something that even today a lot of animation films based on TV shows seem to fail to do. They seem to fail to move away from that TV show element that made them pop in the first place. They seem to forget that you got to step it up when you're in the major feature film. This is a feature film. I shouldn't feel like this should be on television. This film, for the good majority of the time, didn't feel like it belonged on television. It belonged on the big screen. And my goodness, the people who did this really did a great job of making sure hey, this is a big screen event. Don't think this is gonna be like you see on a TV show. Things are gonna hit the fan, and it did. This film has a great first half. The second half is where things start to slow down a little bit, because once these old Autobots start being taken out one by one or being separated from each other, because there were some old Autobots that did survive in the in this movie. Um, Things started to take a very different turn in the film. We started to follow not Optimus Prime and his crew, but a whole new crew led by Ultra Magnus. We had Hot Rod, we had RC, we had Cup. The Dinobots was also part of that crew again. So we started to follow these guys more so than we had followed Optimus Prime and their guys. And for the most part, it wasn't bad. I'm going to tell you right now, it wasn't bad. But the energy that was built up in the first half, that all the excitement, all the action, seems to have sucked out any any of all anticipation of what going on in the second half, especially since we didn't really care for too much of the new Decepticons. Galvatron was a very different character. He was promoted as one of the newest leaders, but we didn't realize that was Megatron. Just got a new paint job. Galvatron was voiced by Leonard Nimoy, which is kind of surprising. And unlike this, the Decepticons in this one is not really the true threat. The true threat is who got Galvatron unleashed, and that was Unicron. For the most part, in the very beginning, you seen this big giant planet-like machine going to different planets, eating them, devouring them, destroying them. And we was like, oh, this is serious. What is this? And we finally found out once he has seen the battered and bruised Megatron being floated in space thanks to Starstream. Gotta love that robot. We find out that he is recruiting Megatron, gave new Megatron and his remaining Autobots that have also been battered and bruised. He decided to recruit him to do a job, and that job is destroy Ultra Magnus and the Autobot matrix of leadership. By doing that, he gave Megatron a new body, Galvatron, which is now like pretty much a cybernetic cannon, and he becomes the newest embodiment of the Decepticons. However, seems to have lacked that same energized spark, the same passion that Megatron has. Even though they're supposed to be the same characters, in many ways they're not. the Autobots have is battered and bruised. They're undermanned. They took a heavy losses. One of them, including Megatron. They get word from Bumblebee and Spike that that the big giant planet is eating the moon and heading towards Cybertron. So now they got to deal with this situation. At the same time, they got to deal with the Decepticons trying to destroy them, and that's basically the premises. Trying to stop um, Unicron, while at the same time trying to stop you know, Galvatron and his new Decepticons from pretty much wiping them out. So it becomes that kind of film for a good part of the film, right up to the very end, when both Autobots and Decepticons, with the exception of Hot Rod and Galvatron, when they had their little personal battle, it really becomes the fact that we got to team up together because this guy is going to destroy this planet, and that's what it pretty much comes down to. Because when we saw um, the transformation of Unicorn, we realized, oh my God, this guy is humongous. All he needs to do is basically crush this planet with his bare hands, and that's it. That's how serious this was, and they realizing, hey, this guy's nuts. We gotta get rid of him. And they do. I mean, and they do pretty much blow his whole body up. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen this film. He's actually a floating head now, and he remained a floating head throughout the remaining of season 3, and I don't even think they was even mentioned in season 4. He was just pretty much gone. Um, my feeling of the movie is this. I love this film for a lot of reasons, nostalgic reasons. It is the best of all the Transformers movies I've seen, bar none. I think the story surprisingly matched well, and he did a great job. By the way, if anything else, I give it for season 3, because season 3 was the downfall of the Transformers series in general. But if I gotta give him anything else, is that unlike certain animation films that I've talked about in the past, unlike the Hugo review, this one is, you need to watch the movie to understand why season 3 the way it is. I mean, there's no else about it. When I saw season 3 and not see the movie, I was confused. What the hell happened to Optimus Prime? Why is this guy the leader of the Transformers? Who is Galvatron? How he came to be? Is Galvatron Megatron, just changed his name? And if so, how he became Galvatron? So there's a whole lot of stuff that if you did not see this movie, you will not be able to understand how the events happen, because the events, after the events of the movie, it goes right into season 3. After that, it really pushed into season 3. Here, this movie does a good job of tying in not only the first 2 seasons, but it actually is the anchor to understand the other seasons that's going to come before it. And also keep that in mind. I'm not totally convinced that season 3 was going to be made, because the way they ended it here. The Autobots have reclaimed Cybertron. The Decepticons are pretty much in disarray. You know, the leader of the Decepticons, Galvatron, he's been thrown out into space. So there's a whole lot of stuff that happened that led into season 3 that I'm kind of wondering if it was rushed, or they already had season 3. They just wasn't finished up yet. But the way it is, you could easily say they could have ended it just with this movie alone, and I think it would have been a fitting ending for an already great legacy for the Transformers. The movie had a great soundtrack. I'm not gonna lie, there's so many good themes from the soundtrack. Dare to Be Stupid is one of my funniest and probably one of my best Will Al Yankovic songs. It's actually on his greatest hits list, and people probably didn't realize that came from the Transformers movies. Dare to Be Stupid, of course, The Touch, the Optimus Prime theme that everybody calling it. Nothing's gonna stand in my way. Dare. That's the list right there. And of course, you had the remake of the Transformers theme. So these themes and a whole lot more really does stuck out to really give the Transformers that feel, that edginess that I actually really do enjoy. A lot of people love the theme song a lot more than the movie itself, and that's okay. If you love the theme song, that's fine. I know a lot of people who love the music of the Blues Brothers 2000, but can't stand the movie, and I really can't blame them either. So, the strength for this film actually is the story. Surprisingly, they went to great details of telling an actual story. They were consistent. with what's going on. I know a lot of people was kind of upset with the 2005 scenario, but come on, this was not in the 80s. Who knows what's going to happen in 2005? Come on, that was like 30 years, 20 years down the road. Come on, so I'm not going to get mad at that. And matter of fact, some people still actually mad with 2015 and Back to the Future Part 2, but it was a film that actually tell you this was years later. The one thing that hurt the film is, like I said, we followed the old Autobots from the first two seasons. We didn't follow the new ones. The new ones got thrown in there, and with the exception of probably Octo Magnus, which we saw the toys, we saw how it looks. Everybody was convinced that okay, either he's going to be the next Optimus Prime, which means that he's going to be reformatted, or he's going to be the new leader. In fact, many people would have been more acceptant of season three had he had been the new leader. He was more of a leader type than Hot Rod ever was, aka Rodimus Prime. So that was always been a big issue with a lot of fans. I love his design. I love what he has done. But other than that, you didn't really care for any of the other Autobots. They really just felt like they were just there just to drag the film along. And that's why I think a lot of people was more hurt with the second half. The first half, it was non-stop action, high octane, edge of your seat. You don't know what the hell's going to happen. Here, it slowly started to slip into that this is based on a TV show. It wasn't until they started picking things up that thing, okay, this is not a TV show. It just, it's just dragging a little bit. And that's the whole thing. It dragged a little bit. I think the saving grace really for me in terms of keeping this at a good rating is the final act. The final act really makes sense to me. This guy is a threat. We got to get rid of him. And it really picked up where it needed to pick up in terms of what it needs to do in terms of tell the story. Other than that, I think again the weakness is these new characters, and that's largely because we didn't really have much of attached to them. We just was thrown into it, saying here, especially after we just lost everything that we was watching during the first two seasons. So that was the biggest problem here with that with the movie is that the second half really was it's like okay, it's okay, but really the saving grace was that third act. The third act, hearing the voice of Optimus Prime one last time saying "Rise, Rodimus Prime," that was big. Seeing that fight against Unicron and the both Autobots and Decepticons really they were just hammering at him. They were just going after him. They said this guy got to go. He lost one of his eyes. It was pretty brutal, pretty brutal how they was handling him, but they had to because this guy was a threat. Overall, it's a three-star film. It's a good film. It definitely holds out a lot more in the story department than any of the Michael Bay films. The only knock about it, if you want to say, is that the animation today is a bit dated. I mean, you got to remember this came out in the '80s. It didn't have the technology that they usually have, but it is a bit dated. There's no question about it. There's no denying it. But what makes it strong is the story. I mean, this is a very solid story. Surprisingly more solid than most of the episodes they have shown on TV. It made sense. The events add up. You didn't question what the hell was going on, and for the most part, you really enjoyed what was being put on the screen. I enjoyed what was being put on the screen. Sadly, and I'm going to say this is a little bit of something you guys need to know. This film didn't do well in the box office. Again, one of the things that I keep saying that the fan base, a lot of studios keep thinking that the fan base is bigger than what it really is. The fan base was mostly children. Parents are not that eager to take their kids to a movie if A, it's going to be talked down to, or B, it's look like it's more violent than what they're promoting. This film was rated PG, but it didn't feel like it should be rated PG. This was at the time when PG-13 was still fresh, and you kind of wonder if they just missed the mark of getting that PG-13 rating. Would have helped the movie? Probably not. I'm not buying that the film probably would have gotten a more fan base, but needless to say, the history of films based on TV shows don't have it good, especially in the 80s. You'd be surprised how many animation films came out in the 80s, and most of them, even if you remember it, it ain't in people's conscious minds now. Rainbow Bright series, the Care Bears movies, you had films that came out in theaters that basically or preschoolers. The animation during the 80s was terrible. This film came out at the wrong time in the 80s because a lot of the animation films did not do well, and this was no exception. Either they were poor in the box office because of the reason of that I just mentioned, or it just was just word of mouth was just bad. This film had good word of mouth, but it came from children. Not many kids ages 5 and under was going to the movies at that time. You still had to have an adult to go in there. You still had to have an adult to pay for the ticket, and adults just wasn't going to sit through a cartoon. That's basically what they saw it. They saw it as a cartoon. They saw it as stupid action. They saw it as something that is not gonna make any sense, nothing educational. So I'm not gonna take my kid to see that film, and that film got hurt because of that. And it not only hurt this movie in terms of box office receipts, it kept another movie from being released from theaters, and that was G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe the movie was an animated film that actually did share the same universe with Transformers, surprisingly. Was supposed to come out a couple months after Transformers. It never did. And the reason is because Transformers had such a bomb so hard that it scared the producers of G.I. Joe from actually releasing it. Instead, we got it as kids as a part special on television. It was released on television, and that's where it stood. That's where it stood. You can get it on video on DVD. It's G.I. Joe the movie, but it never really came in theaters. It never really showed itself in theaters because of this movie. And it's kind of sad too, because again, out of all the films that came out during that time, and there were a lot of bad films, this, along with the Great Mouse Detective, was one of the better ones that came out. Keep in mind, Disney wasn't making any films, and Don Bluth really was, pretty much doing his own thing. That were more darker towards the kids, and that's one of the reasons why Don Bluth was so successful, because his films really didn't talk down to people, which was another thing why parents didn't want to take their kids to see this film, because they did not want to be talked down to along with their kids. So it really was. It came out at a bad time. It was a bad time, and again, that stigma of it being a TV show did hurt it. But do it deserve that stigma? No, it is a good movie. It stood away enough where it says, okay, you now know it's not this. You now know you're not watching another extended cartoon show. You're watching a film, and it did a great job doing that. If anything else, it deserves that. And like I said, years later, years after all the other TV shows of Transformers and even the movies, this one still holds out the best of all of them, and that says a lot. On a scale of 1 to 4, it's 3 stars. I don't regret seeing this movie. You guys may disagree. You guys may hate the film. You guys may be one of those people who were angry and was crying that Optimus Prime got killed. You may be also one of those other guys who hated Hot Rod for it and never gave him a chance a day. I hated Hot Rod because, number one, he was the leader and he wasn't that good. But that's for the TV show to decide. But again, I'd like to hear your opinion. I'd like to hear your comments on it. Please leave it in the comment section. Especially if you see this film, I'd like to hear what your nostalgia about it. But until next time, this is J77 saying take care, be safe. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.